Some idea of where we were.
Where were we? Wait a minute, people are calling.
Let's resume with Roger.
Okay, so trying to resume. I can't possibly have any continuity with whatever it was I was saying before we decided to take a break. I guess one of the things that was popping into my mind was memory of people very influential. One of those in the study program reformation was Deborah Kess. Was elected as the preceptor after Dami, I believe, and she was the one that had the agenda. I think even in the election of doing away with the old study program.
Actually, to get it corrected, I think it was Ann Sokolowski replaced Dami for about 6 months, and then Deborah took over from him.
Okay.
Ann was just an interim.
Right. And being another one of the graduates of the program, and. So there was an awful lot of work in the reformation of that, and it's ongoing, as far as I can tell. And in a lot of ways, I was one of the things that was nice about the older version was that it was designed to not require a huge amount of labor to administer and operate the thing. In some ways, that was its downfall as well, because while there was some objection to the quote-unquote super druid model, it seemed like most of the objections were having to do with the way it had all been carried off, and politics and interpersonal problems and such, having to do with the individuals actually running the program. So it fell down for those reasons. But certainly the model that we've been heading toward over the years would not have been possible back when we didn't have the kind of resources that are around today to write material, to assist with students, all the things that are going on now. So, and that evolution makes a lot of sense.
The other big downfall is everything was funneled through one person.
Yeah,
when that
bottleneck.
person fell down, everything stopped. The way we have it set up right now is, even though we have a preceptor, the preceptor is in charge of a preceptor's posse, a group of people that can go out and help and do things. And we've just formed a new list, and it's only the preceptor posse is on, so all submissions will come into this e-list. It's like the tech list, the office list. Certain people can see it and can respond to it, so everything is archived that comes in, and everything is put out to the right person really quick.
So are they really called the preceptors posse?
It's the preceptor's posse. That was their term.
So it isn't the Council of Lore?
Well, the Council of War is involved in it, too, but they're not the ones that actually do the work of checking the material.
No, they sit back at the ranch while the posse goes off.
That's right.
Right.
I'll tell you the story of the posse later on.
Okay. I guess another highly individual or highly influential person through the years is Ian.
Yes.
Ian Corrigan, who is unfortunately not here today, but has been an incredible influence through certainly the latter part of your term and all of mine, and in this Skip's prolific writer, an inspiring teacher and lecturer, and it's been an incredible asset to the
Created the
organization.
Dedicate program almost single-handedly.
Yes,
And I might add
absolutely.
that Ian, even as a non-Druid in the pagan community, I was familiar with him and knew of it.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
admired it greatly.
Absolutely, and a big personality to have on our side as well.
Big everything.
Let's see. So a discussion of my term wouldn't be complete without mentioning an unfortunate event, which was our finances. When I took over administering ADF, the books were in the hands of Beckett, Edith's daughter, who was in Wisconsin. Yeah, and she was had the post for years and years, and was exhausted and didn't want anything to do with it anymore, and was doing her best to hang on. And back in those old days, it was a big ledger accounting book. It was all by hand, and there were receipts supposed to be sent, and it was a big mess, and it was hard to get anyone to conform properly to all the procedures that were supposed to be followed, and so it was a thankless and difficult job. So I called her up and took that over, and we ended up having my Grove first warden take over that post, which was Whittian. And to my horror, several years later, after we were growing and doing great things and everything going pretty well, I realized that the bank account was completely empty. And unfortunately what he had been doing was living off of our account.
Borrowing. Just borrowing.
Borrowing a little bit at a time, it's true, and that with every intention of paying it back and catching up, and unfortunately didn't. And we got to the point, and was able to pull off a convincing cover. And this is, all part of the learning. This happens to so many organizations, unfortunately. Churches, and also, I guess, I'm sure it's true of so many leaders of organizations, particularly social and religious groups, that you just don't think somebody would do that. That somebody would steal from your family, from somebody, and it was beyond, it was a horrible shock. And so that was a very difficult time in figuring out how to deal with that, dealing with all the legal issues, and getting portions of that repaid. I know I believe there's still some that we never got back. But anyway, that was a real tough thing to go through that I didn't enjoy much.
But we got through it. You know
we
why?
We did get through it.
We did. It was just money.
It's true. It's true. It was just money. It was a important learning experience. So that's an awful lot of what I did. When I was leading the organization, I would like to say that I had added bookshelf to whole new rituals, new philosophies, whole new directions and such. But much of my mission was to try to enable, as I said before, what Isaac had laid out, and then in a lot of ways what had been filled out and given beauty and strength by Ian, right alongside us at the hard work of everybody on the Mother Grove. So I feel like when I look back at my years, it was an awful lot of just trying to figure out how to take the organization, which was smaller and pretty disorganized, and how to move it forward to something that had structure and was online and could function and grow.
Well, you took over at a time where what the organization really needed was not a brilliant intellect or a masterful ritualist. What it needed was someone who knew about nonprofit management.
The administrative.
We really needed somebody with those particular skills. The organization would have probably dissolved into sludge if you hadn't been there.
That is correct.
Well, I guess one of the other things I should mention is that the organization has always struggled with, and it was going on when Isaac was running things, and then also when for the time period when I was administering and Isaac was still running things. There's always an element of difficult interpersonal and political struggle that went on, and I'm sure it's still true today. Although I don't know to what degree. I've heard that it's better.
No, we don't have any prima donnas today.
But
Get rid of them. Front stand, left.
But it was going on, and I don't even know if I can remember what it was all about now. But prior to Isaac stepping down, there were some individuals in the leadership that were making life incredibly difficult. To remain nameless while the tape was on.
Their names are all going to come out in my history books.
No, there you go. But then in a lot of ways, this had accumulated as a call to personality around Isaac over the years, and so him stepping down and us trying to survive that and moving forward, and having an election where she had a contested election, set us up for a lot of trouble. And strongly contested election, two strong camps. A certain amount of ugliness that went on during, and it continued after, and went on for years. And in some ways, the reverberations lasted beyond my term. So that was a difficult thing to deal with. And sorry about the motorcycle. Hopefully, you can still hear. Maybe we'll wait till it. One of the things that was a learning experience for me is I had a philosophy in my, and I guess idealism about in running my grove, that I was very committed to working with all comers. Because basically, if you came through the door, you were family, and we would deal with whatever you brought in with you. And that led to, it's 100-person grove. There were some kooks, that came along. I love them dearly, but we had some difficult individuals, and it took a lot of energy and effort to repair the damage, to help them with their inner social problems and so on and so forth. But it was working, and it had a binding strength to it on the local level. And the problem was that I then tried to carry that into the national organization on the same philosophy. Yeah. And when you've got somebody who's merely knows you as a name on a screen when they're sitting in their basement at their keyboard, as opposed to somebody that you sit down and have dinner with, completely different thing. So I know that I feel that I drug us through, and all the members of the Mother Grove in particular, through a fair amount of pain, because I believe that we should find some way to work with everybody. And there were a number of times that people wanted to run somebody or other out on a rail, and they, in retrospect, should have been, that I resisted that. And I think there were some good things that came out of it, character building stuff. But
you weren't alone in that, though, because I had very much also the same philosophy that, okay, we're going to have a lot of intelligent, creative weirdos showing up along with the other intelligent and creative people.
Yeah.
But that we should have an open door policy. And, so I'd let a lot of people join and get into positions of power that I never should have allowed, but I was busy trying to be open and friendly and hospitable and so on and so forth. And naive, I think, is the technical scientific term.
Right, and I would say that definitely one of the things that I learned personally as a result of this experience of being at the head of this chaos for a number of years, at the time coming into it, my personal resources I felt were limitless, and just because of my enthusiasm and energy to just dive into something and devote everything to it and just let it overwhelm. It's amazing that I even maintained my job. I'd sit and write ADF emails and talk on the phone all day long with people from all over the country with ADF problems. But but by the end, after having this experience, I definitely find personal capital and energy of the individuals around you and their well-being and their positive attitude, maintaining a positive attitude is a precious thing. And that's one of the things that I would definitely learn to do differently, is that in some cases it's just not worth the running one individual out on a rail versus burning out five is something that it was a difficult learning experience.
This ties right in with something that Isaac mentioned earlier. When you were elected to a 9-year office in 1996, and you served 5 of those years.
Yep.
And then we addressed that before you left office, of changing the length of term for an Archdruid to 3 years.
Right, and that's an important thing. I'm the only Archdruid that has, elected. You were divinely appointed, but
yes, I was divinely appointed. Yes.
But that served while having a full-time job and a father of 3, and trying to maintain that. And it was because of my ridiculous energy level that I was able to be effective at all, but it caught up with me. It accumulated, and over time I got less and less effective and more bogged down, to the point that, as you mentioned, after a year as president and 5 years leading the organization, I finally pulled the Mother Grove aside and said, it was becoming apparent to everyone that I was becoming very badly burned out. And so rather than to drag it out for the remaining 4 years that it would have been, I just suggested very strongly that they should change the length of the term, and then resign.
Have another election, quick!
That's right.
We'll wait until the next year.
It was doing nobody any good. But and I think it makes a big difference, honestly. If you have someone who's retired, or at least you were on disability and not the time to be, and although your health certainly presented challenges for you, and I think that's part of what got you to finally say uncle, and to want to step away from it as well. It is an incredible time sink, and energy eater.
Until such a time as ever when we are large enough that we can actually give an Archdruid a living stipend, we're going to need people who are retired or unemployed
That
or
is- right now it's
independently
set up
wealthy.
so that you have to be retired or independently wealthy in order to be Archdruid. You have to have enough time. I can
Or-
say that I devote probably 50 to 60 hours a week to ADF.
Yeah.
And we've started to pay the Archdruid a small stipend. It's the equivalent of about 10 hours a month. But we have a long ways to go.
Yeah, and until it's to the point that an active young person who's got a family and such as their profession, being an Archdruid for
Right.
a number of years, can afford to support their family in lieu of having a job that's going to eat up all of their time. Yeah. The other possibility is redesign the way the organization runs so that the Archdruid is more of a figurehead and does a whole lot less, which I don't see happening anytime soon. So,
We haven't reached the critical numbers we need for that yet.
yeah,
That'll be the 10,000 number.
wow. That would be great.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anything else comes
I
to
might
mind.
even run
but-
again.
I can.
All I have to do is
We've changed the
be a
rules
figurehead.
now.
Yeah, I
We've
wonder. I was
changed the
going to ask
rules
that earlier.
so that now the rules are that you can run for 3 terms, 3 3-year terms. 9 years is the limit that any one Archdruid can run.
In a lifetime.
I
I think it's consecutive. I think you can
No.
take a term off and come back.
No, it's non-consecutive. It's 3 3-year terms is the limit a person can serve as Archdruid.
In a lifetime.
Gee, I might
I'm
have
not
a-
sure. I don't
I
think
might have
we
a
have-
term left after I'm retired.
I don't think we had
Yeah.
lifetime in there, but it's 3 3-year terms is all an Archdruid can serve.
It's not a very fun hot seat, I'll tell you that.
Well,
For the
was
little
it
bit of
during-
glamour
was
that
it
comes
dur-
along.
Was
Yeah.
it during your term that we discovered Kenneth Hawke's book about
Yes,
antagonists?
antagonist in the church.
Yes, it was.
That was when we suddenly realized, oh, that's why we've been having all these problems.
Yeah.
This is a book that I
Antagonists in
believe
the church.
every organizational leader should read.
Kenneth J.
Doesn't matter if
Hawke.
it's a Wiccan coven or a Druid Grove or a Christian church. Every organizational leader should read this.
Well,
Changed our growth.
Yeah, because we tend to attract the person who's already done the rounds of every other group in an individual town, and on the internet you get anybody.
Yes.
And it's true, and that was one of the things that was disheartening for me of those years was just how much one individual or a couple of big people could grind the efforts of people I cared and loved, that have worked together for years and years, just grind everything that they were trying to achieve to a complete standstill.
Yeah.
Just amazing. So, I don't know. I'm sure I'll think of stuff beyond that, but this is the main things. I guess the last thing I want to say is that for me, I was away from ADF for a while, and I'm now back. And I was at Wellspring this year, and I just missed a couple of festivals. They missed me on the calendar, unfortunately. But Isaac has an incredible legacy that's going to be around forever as far as the vision that you've laid out and the things you'll be able to, in your descendants and such, you'll be able to look to and say, there's your stamp on things. And for me, because a lot of that was already in place when I came along, what's been really nice for me in the last year or so in coming back and being involved with ADF again is to find that an awful lot of the work that we all did during the years that I was in the hot seat actually amounted to something. There are foundation stones and things are moving on from that, and so that it was not for naught, but that it's being grown upon today.
I do not believe ADF would have survived without you being where you were when you were there.
And I will second that. You can't
Yeah.
say it's strong enough.
Yeah.
So
You shepherded ADF through its adolescence. Oh boy, lucky you.
All right. To give a little background, as Fox and Isaac did, when I was 16, I was a born-again Christian. That lasted a little less than a year, and I was asked not to come back to church anymore because I would ask the minister questions and point out inconsistencies in the Bible that he had no answer for. So he didn't want me to be a bad influence on the other young adults. So after that time, I went off and explored a whole bunch of different things on myself. I explored Rosicrucian philosophies and Buddhist philosophies and just about anything else I could find. But unfortunately, back in the 60s, there were no Wiccan covens in every city. There was no internet to allow you to get in touch with other people. It was just hidden. And unless you were in the right place at the right time, you didn't find them. So I went until the end of the 70s on my own and reading and amassing a large library of different books on different subjects. And then in 79, I saw an ad in the local underground paper for a Celtic study group for me. So I turned in the application for them and found it was a Wiccan coven study group. So I did that for the year and a day, was accepted into the coven, and then stayed with that coven until it disbanded in the mid-80s. Okay. Still remain friends with some of the people, but there was a divorce in the coven, and the coven split apart, and I acted as high priest for a while, and we've all heard those stories of how that happens with the small groups. Then in 1990, I went to a small festival in Harriman State Park, and it was October. It was a rainy, cold night. The featured band was supposed to be somebody called Real Magic. And all of us are hanging around a fire that just barely wants to burn in the rain, and we're going, where is this band? We're supposed to have some entertainment. And the organizer, Nick, said, well, I don't know. They're supposed to be here any minute. As soon as they show up, it's going to start. And somebody shined a flashlight on this young man, and he said, well, here I am. Let the entertainment begin. And he put on a pretty good set. And then the next day, he did a workshop on what ADF is and explained how ADF wasn't going to be a small coven group. It was going to be a large, public religion with temples and groves in every city, with paid clergy at some point. I thought that sounded really, really good. So I went home from the festival and joined ADF. And then in 91, they had the first Wellspring Festival out at Brushwood Folklore Center. And I arrived there with some other people from Syracuse, and we were standing there in the opening ritual. This giant of a man, Ian Corrigan, stood up, and he's calling for the gates to be opened. And as he's calling on Monanon McLear to open the gates, the mist rolls up the hill and covers the ritual area. And I thought to myself, damn, that is cool. I want to do that. So then we had the annual meeting, and Isaac was talking about the problems with the registrar's office and how they couldn't get paperwork out. And I made that foolish mistake of telling him that I'd been doing a lot of database programming at work, and I could design a database that would make it much more effective. Well, lo and behold, before I knew it, I found myself on the Mother Grove. And I've been on the Mother Grove since '92 in one position or another. Doing just about all the jobs on the Mother Grove except the members advocate. So that's how I got involved in ADF. Before I was elected Archdruid in 2001, I was elected the Vice Archdruid in '98, which was the year that I retired. So I spent the next 4 years going around the country, literally driving around the country to visit with ADF members or groves or anybody that was interested in ADF. If they put me up for the night, I'd sit and talk to them. And it gave me a chance to see a lot of really neat people that are the heart and soul of ADF, really. You don't see it on the email list. You find it in the groves when they come together. You see a lot more of it when you go to festivals and you get large groups of ADF members together. You see that the family, as Fox was talking about, and that extended family goes all around the United States and into Canada, and now we've got groves in the UK and proto-groves in Australia now. Those are the real cornerstone of ADF, is the people. There's some wonderful people. Now, I've been through many of the different struggles on the Mother Grove that Fox had talked about, many of the different changes. As we talked about with the study program, the third large change is when we started adding in the other programs. We want to have it so that it's small, accessible chunks for people. And even now we get people that say, oh, a year on one program is too long to spend. They're looking for that instant access that way back in Druid's project, or Druid's Progress #1, Isaac wrote in his article on what ADF would be. He came out and specifically said that there'd be no instant gratification, no instant ordinations. You had to do the work. That's never changed in ADF. You always will have to do the work at some point. If you're not up to doing the work, well, then maybe it's not right for you at this time. Other things that we've done, Fox did a really good job of getting things together. We had a good set of bylaws, but one of the problems that we found with how we were handling bylaws is we were in a very reactionary mode. We'd see a problem, we'd sit down, we'd put something in place to put a temporary Band-Aid on. And our bylaws lost their consistency. So in 2003, we went out and we consulted with a nonprofit professional lawyer to look over our bylaws and tell us what needed to be done. He came up with a 3-page document of changes that needed to be made. So we went through in the last Mother Grove and spent a lot of time making all the changes that he wanted, restoring the internal consistency to the bylaws, separating out a constitution. This was the big thing he said we needed to have. Isaac originally started out with having it so that he was Archdruid for life and the organization couldn't change. Well, now we have a constitution that defines who we are, what we do. And that constitution can only be changed by a 2/3 vote of the entire membership of ADF. So it would be very hard to change that constitution. It's not going to be a small group coming in and taking over the organization and changing the focus. That's going to remain consistent. We put into the bylaws just what needed to be in bylaws. We separated out, we used to have what was called a standard operating procedures. We had a policy and procedures manual, excuse me. And we found out that policy and procedure manual has a very specific term in the government, and it deals with policies dealing with employees. And since as a church we didn't have very many employees, that was the wrong term to use.
And there's just one I pulled out of the air.
Yep. So we changed that now to standard operating procedures, which is the term they want to see.
Okay.
So that's been changed. The standard operating procedures can be changed fairly easy. It's just a majority vote of the Mother Grove to do that. The bylaws is a 2/3 majority of the Mother Grove, so that's a little harder to change. And as I said, the Constitution is something that's not going to change now. That's very likely in there for the life of the organization. So that's been some changes that we've been doing. We've been adding more programs to the study program. The Initiates program is one that went into effect last year. We've got some very talented people that are going through the different study programs, working the courses, finding out problems that the courses have, and then we can make corrections to it. And we're still working. We have the first circle of the clergy program active, taking students. We have students that will be getting out of it probably next summer. And then the second circle and third circle courses are being designed as we speak. It's mainly the people that have already gone through the first circle that are designing second circle programs, building them so that they're something that's doable and yet are challenging enough that they're going to make sure that the people that come through the training program are well trained. It's going to give us that class of clergy that Isaac was looking for, where they can stand up against a clergyman from any other religion and be able to converse intelligently with them. Other things that we've been doing is we've been getting more involved in the international scene. We've been trying hard now for 3 years to get ADF recognized as a religion in Canada. There's a lot of work involved with it, and seems like every year I'll go up into Canada and attend some of the festivals and meet with people, and they'll be all gung-ho for a little while, and then it drops back off again until the next year. So we haven't reached the critical mass yet in Canada to become recognized as a religion. Right now we're only recognized in the United States. But that's something that we are working for, and as part of the 100-year plan, we'll probably make it and be recognized as a religion in other countries. So I think we're on track. In Isaac's original 100-year plan, he was talking at the end of 30 years, having groves in every city and televised events on TV at Samhain. I don't think we're going to make that. 50 years, maybe. The groves in other cities, we have groves in every state in the United States right now except Alaska, Hawaii, and Idaho.
I'm from Idaho.
But we have members. We have members in every state. But we don't have groves or proto-groves in those three. Other than that, we're doing pretty good. We have members in most, not all the provinces in Canada. We have proto-groves and groves in 3 of the Canadian provinces. Yeah, New Brunswick, Ontario, and Alberta. Those are the only 3 I remember off the top of my head. We do have members in a lot of the different countries. We have a proto-grove in Australia. As part of my job as Archdruid, I've been going out and getting more involved on a national level, becoming more recognized by the federal government as the leader of a church. I'm part of the Council for a Parliament of World Religions, which is a group that gets together all the religious leaders of the world to come together for a meeting. The next one is going to be in Sydney, Australia, December of 2009. Hopefully I'll attend the meeting as a representative of ADF. This past July, I was invited to go down to a religious freedoms rally. It was held in the park directly across the street from the White House. We were down there. Part of it was filmed for the BBC, appeared on there. It was interesting. We had 250 neo-pagans walking around in the park, and the men with the suits with the little earbuds were walking around and looking. And on the other side of the park, there was about 300 people. Normal, the Society to Legalize Marijuana, was having a rally over there. And, you know, they had the people with the suits walking around there, but there they had all the park police with these dogs walking around. I don't know why that was, but... So it was funny to be down there because the park police thought we were really well behaved. We followed all their regulations. We did exactly what they wanted, and we got a lot of thanks afterwards from the park police for what we did. We're putting on a very positive face of the government. So they're seeing us in a lot better light. Other things we've been doing locally is we've just completed an entry for the Military Chaplain's Handbook. It hadn't been upgraded since 2000. So now the military chaplains will be able to look at the entry for ADF Druid and see what the followers of that religion need. Any special regulations or things they need to have.
Does it say mostly harmless?
No, it doesn't say mostly harmless. But
They don't want harmless people in the
that's
military.
right. That would be really bad. So that's been happening. There's another interesting thing that recently happened to me. We found out that there's a new document where you can go through and get filed but it's the classification for on your dog tags. If you go through and file this information, you can be recognized as a legal religion on your dog tags. So we have the paperwork to fill out. It should be in within the next week or two, and we'll put that back into the military and see what we can do there.
Well, they've already had people in the military with Druid on their dog.
Yes, but it wasn't legally on. In other words, there's new regulations in the military. They change all the time. In order to have a legal thing on there, you have to, I can't remember what the name of the code is, but you have to have a recognized code by the military.
Got to give it a number.
Yeah. Right now, do you remember the name of the Wiccan group that's on there? Circle.
Open place.
What?
Keep thinking it's sacred circle.
Oh, Assembly of the Sacred Well. Assembly of the Sacred Well. No? Well, anyways, there's one Wiccan group that's turned in the paperwork, and they're recognized that they can be put on dog tags. So we'll be the first Druid group to be
Will
able
say
to be
Druid or will say ADF Druid?
It'll say ADF Druid. So that'll be a difference. The entrance for the Military Chaplain's Handbook says Druidry, Henriac Fane. And then the AKA ADF after. Okay, so we're listed under there.
All right, we're set to kill then.
We're getting in. One thing that I've been working together with the leaders of other Druid groups is to get a symbol for Druidry recognized that military veterans that die can have on their headstones.
Yeah.
And we got together, and it was hard to come up with a symbol that would be recognized by everybody, but we finally settled on the tri-line Owen symbol. Yep, right there. So we've been working for that. We've turned in our paperwork. They've changed their regulations a few times since 2004 when we started this battle. Now that the Wiccan Pentacle has been established, it's going to make it much easier. But the way the regulations read right now, we still have to have a member of our faith die first, so that their next of kin can turn it
Do
in.
we have any volunteers?
No, but I've heard through the grapevine that something might be happening within the next 6 months.
The next step, after you get this military stuff, is to put in the paperwork to give a symbol and to make a designation for the Boy Scout religious medal.
You go right ahead and do it. No, I'm serious.
Yeah,
You know what paperwork needs to be done.
I haven't seen the
Do
paperwork,
it.
but according to what I've heard, anybody can. You just need to say this is what they have to do to complete it.
Get the
It could be
paperwork.
etiquette program.
Get the paperwork and do that. That would be a good step to put this out in more places, to let more people know about us.
Then it would be in all the Boy Scout handbooks.
That would be wonderful. In fact, you could probably use the piece that was put together for the military chaplain's handbook for a lot of us.
Of course, that means I'd have to come out to my own troop, and I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Why? You could just give us the paperwork and we could file it. But, there's a few other projects going on, again, dealing with the government on a national level. But they have to remain nameless right now. They're in litigation, so we have to wait until the litigation is done before I can talk about it.
But this is the series of
That's
steps.
basically what I've been doing now is I'm trying to get, because things have got to the point within ADF where Fox's work was such a good foundation that with a little tweaking it's tuned to the point now where I don't have to concentrate on the day-to-day running of ADF. What we've been able to do is to take the Mother Grove list, and it's not a mandatory read every day, and if you don't read it for 2 weeks in a row you get kicked off the Mother Grove type thing, which it actually was at some point. But now we've got it down so we have quarterly meetings, one meeting face-to-face at the annual meeting, the other 3 meetings on IRC, and it's an evening 2-hour meeting once every 3 months is the
Why?
only thing you have to do.
So you
What's
don't-
what's IRC?
Internet relay chat.
It's entirely possible that some of the people
Yes, it's
watching
possible
this
they
won't
wouldn't
know
know.
what IRC
Did you have a
is.
question, Fox?
Well, so you don't have the roving, continuous conversations anymore.
Yeah,
The
that's
list
too.
is there that you can read if you want to. It's not mandatory to read it. We've
Oh,
dropped the
okay.
number of members of the Mother Grove down to a reasonable number.
You're welcome.
The regional druids have been taken off and formed their own council now, with one member of the council being elected by the council to represent them on the Mother Grove, similar to the Council of Senior Druids. And yes, Dappet had a big part in that.
A big part?
A big part. Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
I had a hand in creating them, getting them on there.
Yes.
That's fine.
It took me 6 years to get them on.
That's fine. But they're still around.
They're still around.
They're
They're
still around.
expanding now.
I was far more
And there's
interested in
one
their-
operating the camera right now.
And they're expanding out now because now that they're not on the Mother Grove, we can expand and have one regional druid for each state
State?
without making without making the Mother Grove too large.
Yeah.
The other thing that we've done is we've activated the executive council that's always been in the bylaws and we never really had it put together. We have a 3-person council that does the day-to-day running of ADF. If anything comes up that needs to be done, it just goes to the EC list and the EC takes care of it usually within a day, and you don't have to bother the entire Mother Grove. And that's the Archdruid, Vice Archdruid, and Secretary, with the Treasurer and Administrator being on there just as advisors.
Right, and that originally was in the bylaws as when the organization is dwindled down to next to nothing,
Yep.
it can operate at a minimum with this few. was a
So now
vision
we've
as a slightly
taken and
different thing as
used
far as
that
I know. but-
to allow the Mother Grove to step
Right.
back and not have to do it every day.
Right, the opposite. So it seems like you're coming toward the end. I have a question to pose, which I was thinking is kind of interesting. I mean, what we've been talking about so far is how Isaac planted a vision and articulated it and got people attracted to it. And then you and I have both been, because you and I worked together during my term. You were there for it as well. you have continued that work. There's been a great deal of continuity and enhancement, or enabling of the vision that Isaac started, and I think that's quite an achievement to go through 3 different leaders and not have, massive disruptions. And we've had enhancements and improvements, like the initiates program that they're working on, the dedicants program, the study program. We'll see in the longer run. It's still it's still better than what it was, but it's got a ways to go, obviously, before it will be a full-blown. Comparing it to your vision, that's what I mean. It's like that being in
We have lots
university.
of years.
Of course.
Well,
And the thing I was going to say is it's interesting to me how well we've done through these 3 transitions, and I hope that we will continue to do as well. And we might actually want to talk about how do we continue to attract leaders and elect leaders that are committed to the same original or some reasonable slight variant of the original vision, to where it doesn't just get taken off in an entirely different direction that causes a schism.
I think a lot of this comes about by going to the different festivals and traveling around and presenting workshops where we're presenting consistent visions all the time. Whether it doesn't matter if it's Isaac or myself or Kirk, one of us is talking about the vision of ADF, and we're all talking about the same thing that would appear in this article that Isaac wrote that's on the website.
Right.
The vision of ADF. It's all there, and this is where we're basing a lot of our stuff on. That's why we've been consistent.
I suspect that a lot of both the positive and negative aspects of what we've been discussing here has a lot to do with my management approach.
Throw it out and let it go on its own.
My management approach for a very long time was when somebody came up very excited about the organization and having a particular job that they wanted to do, was to give them enough rope and see if they made macrame or hung themselves, as the case may be. Now, that was one of those ideas that sounded good on paper, because in the early years, I was completely unaware of the whole phenomena of the we were just talking about antagonist personality infiltrating organizations. But I made a firm vow to myself when I handed off the Archdruidship that I was going to try to keep my mouth shut most of the time and sit on my hands most of the time and let my successors, do their job without constantly kibitzing. I haven't always managed to not kibitz, but I've done a pretty good job of not kibitzing.
It's good to be in the background and kibitz when you need to.
Yes, and as a result, what we're creating here is a pool of experienced old hands who are going to be around for the next 10, 20, 30 years, for the next dozen Archdruids. And we'll have another list, the old Coots E-list, of all the former ADs.
That when the new fervent person suggests a given thing, we can go, oh, wait, 20 years
We've
ago,
done
Sonny,
that.
we did that.
Been there, done that.
Don't do it again.
Yep.
It's a disaster.
The hard thing, though, is to remember that just because something didn't work when you did it doesn't mean that it won't work when somebody else does it 10 years later in a different environment. I gave my little parable a little while ago about the difference between a church and a grove. One is inorganic and the other is organic. I always felt that what we needed with ADF to make it a healthy religion was to give it an organic structure, give it a skeleton that was flexible, and then let the members put the muscles and the nerves and the other tissues and organs into it, and let it evolve and adapt and grow, in a normal, healthy fashion. And so we've had a commitment from the beginning to a lot more flexibility than most religious organizations ever have.
And we've continued that through the Grove autonomy, letting the Groves do what they want, mainly unless there's something really bad. And then we'll come down.
As he looks at it.
As we look at you, yes.
Well, we haven't seen the ritual tonight. Basically, that's all I have. I think we're doing really good. And being in our 20-some years of the 100-year plan, I think we're doing fairly well. I think the plan might have to expand out to 150 years, but we're still doing good. In 150 years, I could definitely see paid clergy leading Groves. I think that it's going to be at the point where we'll have enough members go through the training program. We'll have that large pool of people that will be able to go into a new city and form a grove with all newcomers and teach them what they need.
It's sort of as a subtopic to this to be continued maybe another time. We got nowhere near.
You're all
the end.
invited back next year.
Well,
This
the-
locality.
One of the things I'd be interested in, I think would be interesting to discuss, because we've talked a lot about the sort of organizational, administrative aspect of things, but there's also been philosophical, scholastic, liturgical shifts and changes that have gone on that are also kind of interesting, I think, to the early rituals that I.
Not all of which I've approved
Good.
of.
Right, and some of those, and that's we would need Ian here certainly.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be
to
good.
talk about those things, so that it would be fun. And some of those, in a lot of ways, are tougher to talk about because they're more deeply felt and held. So, but that'd be a good conversation to have. Because I was
Look at that for next year,
reflecting
the
on
evolution of ADF liturgy.
right, reflecting on
yeah.
right what the rituals that I
The
attended
liturgist roundtable.
early on, because I think there are important and exciting things that have happened in that evolution. I've been writing about that some. I want to have that discussion.
Awesome suggestion.
And that's basically all I have to say.
I don't believe it.
So do any of you have any other questions or comments to each other to bring out those gems and nuggets? Creamy centers?
Chocolate? No, actually, I think we get along together a hell of a lot more than the founding fathers, if you will, of a lot of other organizations, secular and religious. You know, the first few often are, hostile towards each other. And I've never felt anything but friendship from these two gentlemen.
Right. Well, I think it's important that none of us came about as an effort to unseat another one. We didn't.
I had many years to work well with each other.
Right. You didn't come in and with a campaign to knock me out of office, that kind of thing. And so
Exactly.
I
Tried
think
to
that
get you to stay at the end of
eventuality.
your term, but
Actually, Skip was originally elected as Archdruid because he was out of the room when the Mother Grove vote.
that's what happened.
Okay, I have a question. The question is a lot of pagans have a problem with the word church.
Yes, a lot of pagans have a problem with the word
A
church.
lot of pagans
But
have a word.
ADF is
A church.
Yes.
ADF is a church according to the IRS, and we need to follow the rules of the government which we are under in order to keep this.
Render unto Caesar's.
They want to call us a church, let them call us a church. That's fine. All we're doing is using their terminology. People have the problem with the word church, have baggage that they need to work through and get rid of.
Well, in one sense, too, we're more than that. We're a nonprofit religious organization,
No.
of which
You have-
being a church is part of
No,
it.
no, you have to be careful. There's a legal
I know,
distinction
I
between
know.
the two.
Do you think they
But
heard?
we do stuff other than church stuff.
That's all right. We're still, according to them, we're a church, and we're under the church rules, not a religious association or a religious organization.
Right. Okay. But as far as the impact on the average member of ADF, the fact that the supreme theological authority of the United States, the IRS, labels us a church doesn't really matter very much. Okay.
Groves
We're
are
a
free to call
public-
themselves whatever they want
Yeah.
as long as they have ADF
So
in
what
their
is
name.
the IRS's definition of a church?
Oh, I don't
I
have it
believe that
offhand.
there are something like 15
9.
and
Different things in which you
points on a
have to do that.
checklist, and you have to hit most of them.
Most of it,
You
yes.
don't have to hit every one, but you have to,
Right.
And
for example, meet
gosh,
regularly.
in 1983, I designed ADF to fill most of them.
I'm sure you did.
At least
There's
in potential.
An IRS publication that's online that you can go through and download, and it reads what the definition is of a church. It says in there, even though they know that you might be called a temple, you might be called a mosque, you are still a church. They're using
legal-
that term
legal definition.
as a legal definition.
You
And,
need a
and
preponderance of the checkpoints or whatever.
although, words have power, and, no one knows more than I about the magical law of words of power. But to a great extent, my feeling to most of the pagans I meet who get their knickers in a bind over the fact that we're legally a church is get over it. You know, we're doing something we think is really neat. We think other people would probably enjoy it too, and they're welcome to come play. It's our football, it's our backyard. We're very loose on how we enforce most of the rules. And if they want to play the game with us, we're delighted to have them. And if they don't, there's lots of backyards out there. And lots of footballs and basketballs and baseballs and other games they can play if they want to. We don't have to please every single person who walks up to us and says, gee, I like what you're doing except for this, 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 and this. You know, they can go start their own group. We'll encourage them.
And that's happened.
Yes. You're not really a successful religious group until you've had at least a few schisms.
Well, we've had some leavings and schisms in a way I'm still thinking on the takeover theme, and wondering, you know, in our future when eventually someone somewhere down the line of Archdruids is going to get enough of a body unhappy with them come election time.
No, that Selden crisis is not scheduled until 2032.
Oh, good.
Don't worry about it.
Then I won't have to worry about it. I'll be watching from afar.
Well, now with the Constitution in place, it's going to be a hell of a lot harder.
Exactly.
The Mother Grove cannot get together and have a group of 9 or 10 or 15 members change what ADF is. And that was the case up until last year.
Right.
Now,
I guess I would just try and say that, I mean, the three of us would like to think that into the future we'd be able to recognize the organization as being an outgrowth of where we are now and what we've spent a portion of each of our lives to grow and to play.
well, interesting. We've had like 5 or 6 schisms at this point. Basically, groups leaving the organization to do something else. And for the most part, with one major exception, Keltria, they left because they wanted to be a private coven-style group rather than a public pagan church. And they're welcome to
All
do
right,
that.
we're coming up on 4 minutes.
Yep.
All right.
So
well,
do
then
we want to draw this to a
I think we'll
close
draw
then?
it to a close. Do you guys have any last things to say?
No, other
Can I
than the
finish
fact
my
that I think
sentence?
we're doing good.
Other than that?
What about the audience?
Yeah, 4 minutes.
Yeah, finish the sentence. You know, people are welcome to spin off and start their own group. That doesn't change what ADF is when a group of people decide to do something in private. But we set it up, so it's really hard for a coup d'etat to take place.
But it's an open religion. It's open.
It
It's
is an
open.
religion.
An open loose.
Evolution!
So it'll be interesting to listen to the next three up here after their turn.
Yeah.
I would like to say something, Isaac. You know, I've known you for a few years, but I've heard about you, you know, for quite a long time, and we have a common friend, Phil Farber. I was interested to know that you were a friend of the modern visionary Robert Anton Wilson. How well did you know him, and how would you say his personal or his political philosophy affected you and your philosophy for ADF?
Tangentially, we were both part of the same, you know, Berkeley intelligentsia, sci-fi crowd of people. Okay. Major thing I remember about him and Druids, he was never particularly interested in the Druids, but he did start his own group at
entirely
one point.
political.
Yeah, he started a group he called the Reformed Non-Aristotelian Druids of North America, the RNA DNA. And that was as close as he ever got to being interested in Druids. But he was a brilliant man, and he was very good for, you know, sparking ideas off of. So, you know,
A modern
I enjoyed his
visionary.
company.
One of the few people embraced. I didn't know him personally, but I knew him through our common friend Phil Farber, and also through my association with Califon in New York.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, the only thing I wanted to say was, and I think you guys have done a good job. I mean, I don't look like it, but I'm just as old and just as, you know, experienced as you guys that have run the gamut as well. Okay.
Well, that Grecian formula really works.
Well, it's just regular Doc. I don't deny it. I'm an old motherfucker. Anyway, that being aside, the only thing I see is I'm just afraid, and I should have known that Isaac was going to shut me down on this, okay, in his final comments, is that with, the bylaws and the Constitution and the regulation and all this, parliamentary bullshit, that getting caught up in that, you're going to fall into the same trap as those that you wish to avoid. But Isaac's closing comments made that quite clear, that you must operate in the system in which you exist. Okay.
Exactly.
And
Right. We're working
I
on
was impressed by
organic
this.
21st century
I was impressed by
postmodern
this.
modalities.
We've only got less than a minute. Anything last?
That's all I got to say.
You're done.
All right, we're done. Never mind.
We can still talk to people,
Yes.
but
Well,
they
yeah,
still
yeah.